Her husband and daughter were killed by an impaired driver. She's become a huge advocate for anti-impaired and distracted driving, including working with many police departments. She's here to tell her story on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The show is brought to you by OPPS, Operational Police Protective Services, now hiring security and protection professionals in Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. Off-duty and retired police officers, deputies, troopers, agents, and military in good standing are all encouraged to apply. Get more details at oppsprotection.com. Contact us from the great state of New Jersey, my birthplace. We have Pam O'Donnell on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Her husband and daughter were killed by an impaired driver. She'll talk about that. She's become a huge advocate for anti-impaired and distracted driving, working with local law enforcement, including working with local law enforcement agencies. And her website, you can get more details, is catchyoulater.org. That's CATCHYOULATER.org. Pam, thanks so much for agreeing to be a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's not an easy topic to talk about. People ask me all the time, and I do get this question quite often. I've been doing this since 2017, and they're like, how do you have these conversations with people? I don't know how to, and I tell them, look, I don't have the answers. A lot of times I don't have a point of reference where I can compare. I just let them talk and tell their stories, and yours is a heartbreaker.
Yeah, it is, but there's so many more just like me. There's approximately every year 40,000 people are killed by 100% preventable car crashes. And it's an epidemic that nobody wants to talk about.
Right. And that was the case with your husband and daughter. They're killed by an impaired driver. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. He was definitely impaired.
Was it drugs, alcohol, or both?
Drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. And it doesn't really matter. And this is one of the things that gets to me. It's like, well, I wasn't drinking. Were you taking drugs? Right. Yeah. Oh, I had prescription drugs. Don't drive. It's just that simple. Right. What part of that dumb people get? We've been talking about this since I was a kid. And that's a long time ago. And it doesn't seem to be getting through to people.
Right. It doesn't. It doesn't, because there's not enough education out there, and there's not enough. Our lawmakers do not consider this an epidemic. You know, we have the mass shootings, which is an epidemic. Opioid is an epidemic. Overdoses is an epidemic. But sadly, what I was told through one of my local lawmakers, well, you just don't have enough numbers.
Right.
Because only 40,000 people die every year. Only. So what they want to see is 100,000 people die. Then it becomes a big issue for lawmakers.
Well, let's put that into a comparison. My daughter, one of my daughters, Marin, is visiting from Buffalo, New York. We had a conversation for the interview that their population of Buffalo, New York is about 275,000 people. So if you do 40,000 people a year killed by impaired drivers or distracted drivers, let's just multiply it by 10. That's more than the entire population of Buffalo, New York in 10 years.
Yep.
And people don't seem to care.
No, it's getting worse and worse.
And I don't know that we can get the attention of our politicians. They just don't. Look, if it's about I'm using a phrase that you came up with. If you don't have the numbers, they don't seem to care. They're not going to act on it.
Right. What I'm actually doing in May, for the first time ever, which boggles my mind, we are doing Distracted and Impaired Driving Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C. I have done that for cancer research. I've gone down and lobbied for cancer funds. We've never had a distracted or impaired driving lobby day. We're doing our very first one in the history of the United States in May.
The first
which
one.
boggles my mind.
Right. You'd think this would be going on for a long time. And I do want to go into some of your story. And if you can't talk about certain parts of it, that is totally understandable. What happened?
I'm an open book and talk about everything because everybody needs to know.
What happened? You obviously your wife and daughter, your husband and daughter were driving in a car, and
my husband and daughter were driving in the car. He had my 5-year-old daughter in the car seat directly behind him, as she should be at that age. They were coming home from school. He was a high school teacher. She was there with him because they have a daycare center. He was going through the toll and taking the ticket. And this 36-year-old adult, multiple offender. Let's remember, he was a multiple offender. And he came up the New Jersey Turnpike ramp after going through all of Manhattan, driving erratically. Nobody noticed it because in Manhattan you just drive erratically anyway.
Yeah.
But when he went through the Holland Tunnel is where somebody should have done something. Holland Tunnel is 2 lanes. You can't switch lanes. I watched the video. It was as if he was leading a parade going down the middle of the Holland Tunnel. Nobody thought enough to call 911. No, and that's another problem. The public doesn't want to be involved.
Right.
But what they want to do is whip out their phones to take video of something bad happening so they could be the first ones to post it on social media. Mm-hmm. So rather than call 911, they took out their phones and posted this erratic driver going through the Holland Tunnel. Then he goes up the ramp at 55 miles per hour, rear ends my husband and daughter who were doing 0 miles an hour. And what I learned through the trial, if you are rear-ended, your airbags will not deploy. I hope the newer model cars will do that, but right now they don't. So he rear-ended them so forcefully, he immediately internally decapitated them. Both of their necks were broken, so they were dead. And my husband was dead, so he couldn't control the car. He rolled into oncoming traffic, and that's where the car stopped, by hitting a medical van. Coincidentally, that medical van saved my life in 2014 when I had brain cancer.
Oh, we'll have to talk about that later.
That's where the story gets hard.
Your story about your husband and daughter is
right.
Horrible enough, but you survived what would kill a lot of people, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. One of the things, and I have driven in New York, I've driven in Manhattan. As a matter of fact, when I was a teenager, I rode a motorcycle through New York, and I'm like, I'll never do that again. That was just nuts. And for people who aren't used to that, number one, you think, okay, it's a big urban area. You're not going to hit high speeds. However, there's a lot of fatalities. There's a lot of traffic fatalities. And unfortunately, your husband and daughter were 2 of them. Right.
They're now statistics. They are now dots on a map. Yes, they are.
And what people don't realize is speed does contribute, and it can be a big factor in traffic fatalities. However, it's the accidents, impaired driving, distracted driving, looking on your cell phone, texting, all that other stuff is one of the leading causes of these unintended deaths and traffic accidents. Of all the radio stations in the United States, there are no other shows like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And on Facebook, there's only one official page. Do a search on Facebook for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And be sure to like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. We're going to take a short break. We're talking with Pam O'Donnell on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. OPPS, Operational Police Protective Services, provides professional, safe, and effective security services in Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, and will be expanding to other states soon. And they're hiring security and protection professionals, off-duty and retired police officers, deputies, troopers, agents, and military in good standing are all encouraged to apply. That's OPPS, Operational Police Protective Services. Get more details at OPPSprotection.com. Again, that's OPPSprotection.com. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is brought to you in part by Colonial Metals Group. Protect your family's financial future with gold and silver. Their level of professionalism makes it easy for you to learn everything you need to know about preserving all you've worked for. Take advantage of a special offer for our audience, and you'll receive a safe and up to $10,000 in free silver. Call 800-898-1841. 800-898-1841. That's 800-898-1841, or go online to colonialmetalsgroup.com/LET radio. Back to our conversation with Pam O'Donnell on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Her husband and daughter were killed by an impaired driver. She's become a huge advocate for anti-impaired and distracted driving, including working with local law enforcement agencies. Her website is catchyouLater.org. That's catch, CatchyouLater.org. And there's a term that is used quite often. It's called accidents. And
Right.
well, I'm going to go more into your story in a moment. What I say a lot of times is they're on purposes, because so many of these so-called, and I'm air quoting, accidents, if someone hadn't driven drunk, if someone hadn't decided to pick up their cell phone and read a text, if they hadn't done all these things, there wouldn't have been this so-called accident. However, that's the only
Correct.
term that seems to fit. I just call them on purposes or very avoidable. How's that?
Right. Very avoidable. I mean, in the advocacy world, we use crash or collision because accident implies that it wasn't meant to happen.
Right.
Accident implies. Now, I know that he did not go out and say, I'm going to do drugs and kill someone.
But this wasn't his first
the
offense.
Chances are, if you're going to do as much drugs as he did or any drugs at all, chances are something bad is going to happen.
Let's
That's
break this.
why even medical prescription bottles will say, do not drive while taking Percocet.
Right.
Do not drive if it makes you feel different. It's literally written on your prescription bottle, but people still do it.
Well, I want to refocus this. If this was not his first offense, you said he had multiple prior offenses, am I right?
Multiple prior offenses, yes, and they normally are.
So this guy
Most
already
people
knew.
that kill somebody
This guy,
are multiple habitual offenders.
this guy already knew that he had a problem with drugs and alcohol. Am I wrong?
Correct. No, you're not wrong.
And they decided to drink and drug anyway.
Yep,
If he had not made that decision, your husband and daughter would still be alive.
correct.
If he had not made the decision to get in a car and drive after drinking and drugging, your husband and daughter would still be alive. Am I correct?
Correct.
If he had decided, I'm under the influence, even a little bit buzzed, I'm just going to take like a ride-sharing program and get home that way, your husband and daughter still be alive.
Correct.
This is where the avoidable part comes in. This is we unfortunately have to talk about the end result. The end result was your husband and daughter were killed in a horrible way. There's no easy, good way to have this happen.
Right.
What were you doing when this occurred?
I was at work, and I didn't know. I was calling my husband at about 3:15 because I knew he would have been on his way, and he wasn't answering, and he hadn't called me. And that's when I thought, all right, something's wrong. Either he's late, something's wrong. And the crash happened at 3:19, and at 4 o'clock is when I got a phone call from Jersey City Medical Center asking who I was, if I was related. I said yes. They said, stay right where you are. We're sending detectives to come and pick you up. I said, why? And she said, I can't tell you. I said, oh, no, you're telling me?
Yeah.
And kind of got into an argument with her that she wasn't telling me. And that's when I said, well, you mentioned my husband, put my daughter on the phone. And that's when I heard her gasp. And she said, you have a daughter? I said, I have two. One is at school in Bayonne, and one is with my husband. And that's when I realized something really bad happened. What she should have done was put me on hold, mute, or said, I'll call you back. Instead, I heard her radio back to the crash site and said, you better check that car again. There's a baby in the car. So for 41 minutes, nobody knew my daughter was in the car because there was no back seat.
And not to criticize them, one of the things that we had as standard policy in Baltimore was we never, ever, ever did death notifications by phone. Ever.
Right.
It was always done Look, if a hospital had something like that happen, they would say, they called it a police department. The police department say, go to this address or wherever it might be. Find so-and-so. If you find them, tell them your husband and daughter were killed in a car accident, and we need to take you this. That's the way it's done.
They were coming to pick me up to bring me to the hospital to tell me.
They never should have called you. Never should have called you.
Right.
I'll repeat that. And you think in places like New Jersey, Bayonne, New Jersey, that area, it's populated enough. They go through this enough. It's not going to be the first time it's happened, and unfortunately won't be the last time it's happened. You never, ever do death notifications by phone, ever.
Right.
Not in any way, shape, or form. So was it the Bayonne Police Department came to your work?
No, actually, I was working in Rutherford by Giant Stadium, so they called Rutherford Police and asked if they can get 2 detectives to pick me up and bring me to Jersey City Medical Center.
Guess what? My first place I lived, I was born in Passaic, and I lived in Rutherford, New Jersey. And guess where my dad was born? Jersey City.
Wow.
I know. What a small world, right?
Yeah.
At what point, you kind of knew already that the worst had happened.
I knew something bad happened when I heard her say that, and all I was thinking was, okay, maybe they're injured, maybe one's in a coma. I never, ever anticipated finding out both my husband and daughter were dead. Never anticipated that.
And how old were you when this happened?
I was 43.
That's relatively young. You don't expect. The reason I'm bringing that up, Pam, is I don't walk around thinking, the older I get, I think about my mortality, that is becoming an issue. However, when I'm in my 30s and 40s, I don't think about that. It's like, hey, we're going to live to forever, and we're going to have the nice house, the white picket fence, and everybody live happily ever after, and we'll laugh and laugh and laugh. And that wasn't in the cards for you.
No.
And there's really no way. I'm not going to ask the stupid question. How do you get on with your life afterwards? It's not like you open up a new book. This was all forced on you and was never anything you ever wanted, nor did you expect. And I hate to sound like I'm assuming.
Right. I assumed it was going to be me because I had brain cancer. And I thought it was going to be me because I was scheduled for post-cancer surgery. And that whole weekend, I had a bad feeling something was going to happen. And I thought it was going to be me. So I never told my husband that I thought I was going to not come out of the surgery. And then Monday happened, and it was them and not me. And I will forever live with that survivor's guilt.
That's horrible. We're going to take a short break. We're talking about Pam O'Donnell. Her husband and daughter were killed by an impaired driver. She's become a huge advocate for anti-impaired and distracted driving. And her website is catchyoulater.org. That's catch, CatChyoulater.org. Follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on the Newsbreak app. It's free. And get the latest crime and law enforcement news on the Newsbreak app. It's simple, easy, and free. Just download the Newsbreak app. Then search for and follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on the Newsbreak app. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We got so much more to cover. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. I believe in having a substantial percentage of my financial future secured with gold and silver. That's why I decided to partner with our sponsor, Colonial Metals Group. They helped me set up a safe and secure self-directed IRA where I have access to my assets no matter what the stock market, or for that matter, the government is doing. Let the team of experts at Colonial Metals Group help you protect your family's future. We've put together a special offer for our audience. Call 800-898-1841. 800-898-1841. That's 800-898-1841, or go online to colonialmetalsgroup.com/LET Radio. Back to our conversation with Pam O'Donnell on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Pam's husband and daughter were killed by an impaired driver. She's become a huge advocate for anti-impaired and distracted driving, including working with a lot of local law enforcement agencies. And her website is catchyoulater.org. That's catchyoulater.org. CatChyoulater.org. For winter break, Pam, you brought up a point, and when I say interesting, that doesn't mean I approve of any of this. This is horrible stuff. But you had brain cancer, and you mentioned earlier in the conversation that at the end of the accident, the vehicle that your husband had been driving hit another medical van, and that was part of what was involved in saving your life. I imagine that was from the brain cancer treatment.
Right. We kind of came full circle that the van that helped me live and brought me to and from chemo treatments that I fought so hard for my family of four, my husband and two little girls, ultimately was involved in taking half of my life. And my husband and my 5-year-old.
I feel horrible for you. I also feel horrible for the first responders that were there and the driver of that van. I'm sure.
Talking about the first responders, they were my husband's students. They were his former high school students. So can you imagine being a first responder and coming across that, whether it's a car crash or somebody shot, and it's somebody you knew?
No.
And so because of them, I did not have to ID my husband. They ID'd him for me, and I'm forever grateful for that. But then I did have to go to the hospital and find out they were dead, find out what happened, and I did have to ID my daughter.
Wow.
And nobody should ever, it defies the laws of nature to bury a child. And to have to go into a room and see my 5-year-old daughter, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, spunky little girl, lying very cold and lifeless. And then to find out not only was her neck broken, she was cut in half by her seatbelt.
Yeah.
It was tragic, and I was in shock for an entire year.
Look, I'd still be in shock. Are you kidding me? I don't think I could talk about this. You're doing great, because there's no way I could talk about this. I'd be sobbing and angry.
I guarantee you after I hang up with you, I'm going to sit here and sob for 20 minutes. I go out and do what I do because it's the only way I know how to grieve. I could have gone down that rabbit hole that I know others have gone down and become an alcoholic or not leave my house. But I also have another daughter that I have to be an example for.
Right.
I have to be both mother and father. I have to make sure that she goes on with her life and that she grows up and knows that she shouldn't expect anything for free. Unfortunately, like a lot of other people in our position, do think that they deserve something for free because they suffered such a tragedy. But that's not the way I want my daughter to live. She still has to get good grades. She still has to go to school. Hopefully she'll get a scholarship because that's what her dad would have wanted.
Right.
He was the smart one. He was the teacher. He was the one everybody loved. And I want her to do good to make him proud, and she is.
Two things that came up, and my mother is from that area. Her parents immigrated from Ireland, and she said to me many times, and my dad was in the Navy. He was gone a lot. I'm the mother. What can I do? I've got a job to do. I've got kids to take care of. It's not like I can sit around and mope.
Right.
No matter how sad she was, she did her job. No matter how ill she felt, she did her job. And I'll be honest with you, Pam, I owe a debt of gratitude to this. Every year on my birthday, I call her and say, happy birthday, thank you for all the work you did that day. Not just that day, but every day since.
Right.
I
hope one day my daughter looks at me and says the same thing, because it was supposed to be me that died, not her dad and sister.
That's another point you brought up. Look, and I'm not blaming anybody. I want to say it again. I'm not blaming anyone. Unfortunately, what happens a lot of times when we are in a marriage and we've got a lot of stress going on, a lot of worry, a lot of fear, our loved ones catch it. Yep. And you were worried that you're the one that's going to die. Would that affect your relationship with your husband at the time? No.
We just had such a great relationship. We were happy. What we lacked in money, we had in fun and love. And after I had my cancer diagnosis and became cancer-free in 2015, we had the greatest year of our life because Mom had a second lease on life.
Right.
And we thought we'd grow up and watch our kids graduate grammar school and pre-K and, go on their first date and a boy breaks their heart or a girl breaks their heart.
Right.
And we never got to do any of that.
the stuff that we all take for granted. And I want to bring up a point that should be obvious to everybody listening right now, that it's not just our police that are in danger of really bad things happening or other first responders. Unplanned events occur that have tremendous financial ramifications, not just life ramifications for our survivors. Be proactive.
Correct.
You never think it's going to happen to you. I'm sure you didn't think it's going to happen to you and your husband.
Right.
Why would it happen
in a million
there?
years that I think would happen.
Why would it happen there? You would never think that would have happened.
Nope. And it does every single day across the United States. And it's sad.
And this is one of the things that gets me, and I'll get off my soapbox. I see it every day on social media. On our Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page, they'll insult state troopers. They'll say, oh, they're just revenue generators. Or they're just trying to go after speeders. And I'm like, you know how many people get killed in these accidents?
Exactly. That is one of the worst things that I hate, is that they think everything is a money grab. It is not a money grab. They are out there doing their job. And that's why I got involved with the police.
Which we will talk about.
I want to change the narrative. Not all police are bad.
No.
You can have good and bad in any job, whatever you have. But you know what? It's not a money grab when they do. April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month, so they do these campaigns. That's what the money's supposed to be used for, to put extra police on the roads, to stop these speeders, to stop these erratic drivers. And you see it on social media. That's a money grab. It's a money grab. No, it's not. Yeah. It's to make sure that you don't have to bury your child.
And they use terms like road pirates, and I just laugh at them because they're idiots. I'll just say that.
They don't know what they're talking about.
They don't, but they sound like they think they sound good.
I guarantee you, if it happened to them, they would change their mind.
Right. You know how many times I've been pulled over in the last 25 years? Twice.
How many?
Twice in 25 years. And both times I deserved it. It wasn't like it was by accident. And by the way, nothing happened either time. There's a simple solution. Slow down, take it easy. And I got to ask you this, because I find myself getting, and every now and then my wife will say to me, if we're together in the car, she's like, just relax. I see someone on the phone and they're texting while driving, and I roll down the window, I yell at them. Do you get that way?
Yep, I do. I do. It drives me out of my mind.
Why can't they just slow down? Why can't, and same with drunk drivers. I'll yell at them too.
I am the first one. If I say to, the law enforcement that I'm involved with, just give me a pad and a paper and a siren. I can spot an erratic driver 2 miles away.
Absolutely.
That's all I do when I'm going to schools or police academies or anything like that. I could spot them 2 miles away. A siren, and I'll pull them over.
And let you go.
I want a gun. But that's how I got involved with the police.
We're going to take a short break. We're talking with Pamela O'Donnell. Her husband and daughter were killed by an impaired driver. She's become a huge advocate for anti-impaired and distracted driving, including working with local law enforcement agencies we'll talk about in a few moments. Her website is catchyoulater.org. That's CATCHYOULATER.org. If you want to be a guest on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, simply contact us. It couldn't be easier. You can send us a message on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show page, or email jay@letradio.com. That's JAY@letradio.com. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Keep yourself and your loved ones safe by opting for OPPS, Operational Police Protective Services. They offer armed security personnel who can protect you and ensure your safety at all times. They're dedicated to creating a safe environment, building trust, and enhancing the quality of life for their clients. They are committed to delivering quality service, safety, and security in an effective, responsive, and professional way. That's OPPS, Operational Police Protective Services. Get more details at OPPSprotection.com. Again, that's OPPSprotection.com. I believe in having a substantial percentage of my financial future secured with gold and silver. That's why I decided to partner with our sponsor, Colonial Metals Group. They helped me set up a safe and secure self-directed IRA where I have access to my assets no matter what the stock market, or for that matter, the government is doing. Let the team of experts at Colonial Metals Group help you protect your family's future. We've put together a special offer for our audience. Call 800-898-1841. 800-898-1841. That's 800-898-1841, or go online to colonialmetalsgroup.com/LET Radio. Back to our conversation with Pam O'Donnell on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Pam's husband and daughter, infant daughter, were killed by an impaired driver. She had become a huge advocate for anti-impaired and distracted driving, not just in the state of New Jersey, but nationwide, including working with local law enforcement agencies. And her website is catchyoulater.org. That's CATCHYOULATER.org. Pam, I hate to say this because it sounds so trite. I'm sorry this happened to you and your family. No one.
I appreciate that.
I wish I could come up with something else. And to be truthful, I wish I was, and I had learned this a long time ago. I'm not God. I'm not Superman. I can't turn back the hands of time. And you can't either. I'm sure you wish you could. But this is the hand you were dealt. And I know that sounds cold and callous. It's a horrible hand. It's one that no one wants. Now, how do you go about being a mom and building the life you want in spite of?
My first and foremost is my daughter. I want to make sure she's okay. She's been in therapy, intense therapy. It's the only way we've gotten her somewhat normal. You always see in the paper plea deals, 5 years, but nobody ever talks about what happens to the families at home afterwards. It's not easy. It's not easy to wake up every day and get up and go to school. But she's got to do it. She wants to make her dad and her sister proud. She just made a confirmation. She just turned 15. And days like that are milestone days for kids that age. And her dad and sister weren't here. Last year, she graduated 8th grade on her dad's birthday. And I said, oh, my God, of course it had to end up on her dad's birthday. And I said to her, just think that Daddy's going to be walking that stage across when you get your diploma. And she looked at me. She said, Mom, I don't even want to graduate because Dad's not going to be here. I said, he will be with you. He's in your heart. And my little one, Bridget, that was 5. She would end any sentence with, you're always in my heart.
Right.
Always in my heart. So we do that. We do the best we can. We do therapy. I suggest everybody go to therapy. I'm a big therapy fanatic because everybody needs it. We all need to talk to somebody that's unbiased.
Right.
But I also get to grieve by going out and talking to high schools. I've become the first and only in New Jersey state history, which was one of my biggest accomplishments, is the first and only civilian certified police instructor. So I can go to any police academy in the state of New Jersey and instruct the police on, you know what, you got to pull these people over. You can't just turn a blind eye to it. Not only that, I also became the first and only civilian state trooper instructor. And state trooper is a whole other entity because they are very tight and close-knit. They don't let anybody into their organization. They don't let any civilians in, but they let me in. I did the work. I went to their school. I did their classes. I graduated. I got certified. And I'm now the only civilian certified police and state trooper instructor in the state of New Jersey. And it's one of my biggest accomplishments because I have nothing but respect for our first responders. And I didn't have a problem with them before the crash, but seeing that my husband's students, his former students that used to put diapers on my babies when he would bring them in to school, how it affected them. And then it shocked me and it got to me. These first responders, whether you're an EMT, cop, fireman, whatever you are, they go out and see atrocities every single day. And people tend to forget they are human too. And they don't forget what they see. So when your husband or your wife comes home and they're a cop and they saw somebody's head blown up by a gun and they're quiet, that's the reason why, because they can't get that vision out of their head.
Right.
And two of the firemen that were very, very close to my husband were not allowed to go back to work for well over a year. So talk about payment and how it affects you financially. These two firemen were not allowed to go back to work for over a year. So that's when I realized this really affects police and fire and EMTs.
Look,
and the EMTs actually created, one of them was my husband's former student. She created our logo for our foundation. So that's when I created a nonprofit. We solely work on the generosity of others. And I go across the United States and talk to high schools, first responders, corporate companies, and just talk about what can happen and how you can avoid it.
Here's your chance, man.
And how you should avoid it.
You are talking right now we're on hundreds of radio stations across the United States, and we broadcast to millions of combined population. What would you say to them as they get in their car? What would you, and by the way, let's just not limit it to the drivers. Let's also talk about everybody else.
Oh, the passengers are actually the number one distraction for teen drivers, which we're coming up upon the 100 deadliest days for teen drivers is Memorial Day to Labor Day. So everybody needs to know that more teens are going to die in the United States between Memorial Day and Labor Day than any other time of year. And that's going to be because of 100% preventable car crashes. So if your teen is getting their license, you have to have that kitchen table talk, which I think my husband always said before he died. What our nation, what the world is missing is the kitchen table.
Absolutely.
When we all sat down to dinner together. But now we got soccer, cheerleading, football, all of this stuff going on, and the kitchen table is missing.
Or they're sitting at the table and they got their handheld devices and they're glued to that.
Yep. And nobody's talking to each other. They're all on their phones.
Very quickly, it's a different subject. I was at a restaurant with my wife. I call her the boss. And there was a younger couple, late teens, early 20s, obviously on a date. And they're not talking to each other, and they both got their heads down on their phones. And I wanted to walk up to the guy and slap him and say, you're doing this all wrong. You need to talk to her. Just have a conversation. Ask her about her day.
Right.
Let's get off that device.
Put the technology away.
Yeah.
Technology is the root of all evil, honestly. It just became worse and worse, and it's getting worse.
Well,
and now we have, the Teslas that drive themselves. Yeah. But now there's the car crashes because the driver fell asleep thinking the Tesla car can drive itself, and there was a crash. Right. So somebody died.
And here's the
more
one thing.
Technology is not good.
The one thing I would say is it can wait. Number one, if you are driving and you got your cell phone with you, your smartphone, that text, whatever it is, that notification you get, it can wait till you get to where you are. And we could numb people's minds with statistics about how far you travel in a second at 60 miles an hour. It can wait. And if you are drinking or drugging at all, whether it be prescription or otherwise, do not drive. Again.
Absolutely.
Even the slightest bit. I don't care. People say, well, it's well below legal limit. I don't care. Stop. Don't drive. We want to shift gears.
You never know.
How can people get in touch with you? You've got a website, catchyoulater.org. Can they get in touch with you there?
They can get in touch with me there. They can get in touch with me on Instagram or Facebook or my phone number. I answer calls. If they need me to go out to their house and sit down with their teen, I'm willing to do it. I am all about, this is the only way I know how to grieve, because I refuse to have let my husband and daughter die in vain. There had to be a reason I survived and they didn't, and I believe that's what this is all about.
Is there any truth to this pain provides some passion for your mission today?
Yes.
It doesn't make it all okay, but it gives you a purpose for what you do.
It doesn't make it okay, but it makes me feel like, all right, I got to one person, and you're telling me how many people listen to you. I hope everybody that listens to this, look at your phone and look at your text message, the last text message you received or sent, and you tell us whether it was worth it.
Right. And
that's what I tell the classes. I make the classes, teenagers, take out your phones and look at that text message. Was it worth to look at? Was it worth your life to look at that text message while you were driving? And every hand was raised and said no.
It's just not worth it. And by the way, do me a big favor. Tell your daughter, Bridget, we said hello and thank you for all she does. Pam, thank you so much for being a guest on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.